Students, today we're going to be talking about filing taxes. So find that lesson in your Canvas. And this is one of the big topics with personal finance, filing taxes, your role in determining what taxes that you pay and ensuring that you have fulfilled all of your specific duties to the IRS, what you're considered legally, all the little nitty gritty things that you personally have to do and keep track of whenever you ultimately do your own taxes, or whether you choose to have somebody else do it, or what may come of that entire subject. So one of the first things I want to look at in step one is kind of narrowing what legal considerations might be applicable to you. And the first word I really want to talk about is who is considered a dependent, because depending on your financial situation, if you work a job, if you make money on the side, if you don't work a job, if you have some source of income, if you give to charity, you donate to a nonprofit, all of those financial figures are into consideration with these legal standings. So the first one that I want to really focus on is being a dependent. And it's important to know if you are this or not. And I'd like you to kind of think to yourself if you fit this definition. So if you're a U.S. citizen, U.S. national, U.S. resident alien, or a resident of Canada or Mexico, and you have a social security number, an individual taxpayer identification number, or adoption taxpayer identification number, and you're not filing married jointly unless it is only to claim a refund of the taxes paid. So maybe U.S. if you're any of these U.S. citizen, have social security number, you're not filing married jointly. And then a lot of the times, legal guardians or parents, they're going to be claiming their children as dependents. And so if the parent or legal guardian, for example, provides at least 50% of the child's support, food, shelter, clothing, they are legally the son, daughter, stepchild, foster child, brother, sister, stepbrother, stepsister, or descendant of any of these. If they're under the age of 19 on December 31st of the tax year, and they're younger than you, or if your spouse is filing jointly. And so these definitions really corner in what is considered a dependent, or if they're really going to be on another person's taxes as a dependent. So this really becomes more applicable whenever you have a job, you're making more of a significant source of income. So that's a lot of the reasons why you don't really get the chance to do any of these filing taxes around the high school or lower level. And then the second question we need to really see is who has to file taxes, do the paperwork for taxes. So there's all these different categories: single, head of household, married filing jointly, married filing separately, a qualifying widow. And they give age restraints, and then they give gross income restraints, right? So you really have to be making, if you're like single, for example, and you're under 65, you're only going to file your taxes if your gross income is going to be more than $12,000. So people really just need to think of themselves that, okay, if it's just me filing the taxes, am I alone making about this much money? Even if you have if you've made $10,000, you should look more into this in the requirements. But whenever you start making thereabouts on those figures, that's whenever you really want to start thinking about filing taxes. Okay. So think about those numbers. That's like a good base number in my mind whenever I was really starting to think about these things more toward the end of high school and into my college years. Am I meeting these requirements? Am I considered a dependent? How much money am I making? Because I had a few different jobs while I was going throughout high school. So just keep a finger on the pulse, right? Just keep a good idea of what you're doing, what categories you're considered under. And these are really good guides. I think these are updated as of last year, but it shouldn't be a crazy change between the last 2 years with these qualifications or legal standings. So let's watch this video in step 2, and I want you to identify and submit 5 factors you should consider when filing taxes.
And a state tax return, and the deadline to pay is time, I was both lost and confused, and honestly, a little bit frustrated that after years of education learning things like trigonometry and poetry, they had never taught me something so common as how to file your taxes. But at least I can find the cosine of a triangle, right? Anyways, this video is the video that I wish I had back then, and hopefully it'll help you get through doing your taxes for the first time. So, without further ado, let's get started. So I'm not going to waste your time on this grand explanation for why we pay taxes. All you really need to know is that we pay taxes to fund the government, need to fill out both a federal and a state tax return, and the deadline to...
That's important to consider as well, too, being sure that you fill out forms for the federal taxes and state taxes, and often local taxes as well, too.
Pay your taxes is April 15th. When people talk about filing taxes, all they really mean is filling out these complicated tax forms and mailing it to the Internal Revenue Service, or IRS, along with any payments that you owe for taxes. I'll put a link in the description below to help you figure out if you even need to file taxes, but generally speaking, if you had a job at any point during the year, you should file your taxes because you might owe more taxes now, or you might be getting a refund because you overpaid on your taxes throughout the year. All right, so how do you...
There's all these little figures you have to be super aware of, all the different revenue or all the different streams of revenue that you might be receiving if you had a job for even some part of it, what your withholding is. It's all super complicated.
Actually file your taxes? Well, there's three main ways to do it. The first way is to fill out those tax forms manually. I'll put some links down in the description to learn more, but honestly, this is probably one of the worst ways to do it, especially for your first time. Moving on, the second way to do it is to just have a professional do it for you. This can be a good option if you have a particularly complicated tax situation, such as owning your own business, going through a major life change, or if you had forgotten to pay taxes in the past. But frankly, this option can get expensive, and if this is your first time filing taxes, your situation is most likely not that complicated to even need help in the first place. That's why most people use the third option, which is to use tax preparation software to help you do your taxes. The way tax preparation software usually works is that they ask you a bunch of questions about your income and possible deductions, and then they fill out your tax returns for you. This option is pretty easy and very popular, but it also often comes with a fee. However, many tax preparation software can be used for free if your adjusted gross income is less than a certain amount. You can kind of guesstimate your adjusted gross income by adding together all the sources of income you've made throughout the year. The IRS has a list of free software that you can use to file your tax returns that I'll link down below. When you're looking through the list of options, pay extra attention to the requirements you need to meet in order to use their software for free, and check whether or not they provide a state tax return for free as well. Remember that you need to file both federal and state taxes, so you want a software that can fill out both for you at the same time to make things easier. If you aren't sure which one to use, I found that TurboTax is one of the easiest, but it's also one of the most expensive options to choose. On the other hand, Free Tax USA is often praised for actually being free, while a lot of other free tax software finds a way to sneak fees into your return. The only drawback I see with them...
Determining like the software too, if you want to go down that route, is important to consider as well too. Ask people around you, your family members or friends or siblings like that, well, maybe what they've used in the past whenever they've gone through similar services.
Is that they charge a flat fee for your state tax returns, but honestly, the price is still pretty good and they're very upfront about it. And lastly, my personal favorite tax preparation software has always been TaxAct. They're a good alternative to TurboTax, but a little bit cheaper. But just like TurboTax, they also find little ways to upsell you on certain features. Now, before you use any of these methods to file your taxes, make sure that you have all your tax-related documents ready. Your employer should be sending you a Form W-2, which basically lists how much money you've made throughout the year and how much in taxes has already been withheld from your paycheck. You might also get forms from your bank if they paid you more than $10 in interest throughout the year, or forms from any other sources of income that you've earned. Most of these forms are supposed to be sent out by January 31st, so if you're expecting a form and you haven't received one, you should contact your company to see if a mistake was made. Well, I hope this guide will help you through doing your taxes for the first time.
Cool. And with that too, if you also want to consider, the IRS does have this little simulation. I was going through it on my phone. The IRS, if you just put it into Google, do I have to pay taxes? They just have this short level survey that you can take to determine all of these different things that we're talking about here. So one last thing for step 3, I have this little simulation for you with a bunch of different tax scenarios that you can look through. I want you to choose and complete 2 simulations that interest you. Take and submit screenshots once you are done with each, and then make sure to use the check my answers tool as you go along. And then what you're ultimately submitting is your response to step 2 and screenshots of your 2 finished simulations from step 3. And with that, that'll be it. Have a wonderful day.